we're so angry here in Chicago, which has been a Democratic stronghold for most of its eternity. We have to stop marrying ourselves to party, stop voting along ethnic lines, because we're seeing that that is not working for us. And so that is why I will be voting Republican for the first time.
Well, that Chicago voter was with me last week. She's caught a truss. And she got a lot of pickup. That went viral. A lot of people talking about what she said on The Focus. About that same time last week, former President Trump was giving the keynote address to the Black Conservative Federation. He laid out a path to securing more black voter support, and a top Democrat admits, this could be trouble for Biden.
I don't dismiss the issue of young black men, and I think that's something that the Biden campaign and Democrats need to keep an eye on, because I don't think it's just a statistical blip. This has been a trend line.
Republican Senator Tim Scott of the great state of South Carolina, member of the Foreign Relations Committee and the former 2024 presidential candidate. Great to have you in focus today. Welcome.
Thank you, Harris.
I want to jump right in here. Could you hear what Caught a Truss was saying? So it's not just in that state, it's also in your home state. I mean, I'll show you that in just a minute, but I just want to get your top line thought on all of it.
Well, without any question, I went to the south side of Chicago when I was running for president, and the one thing I understood clearly, meeting with a guy named Reverend Brooks, black folks on the south side of Chicago, after 100 years of a monopoly of the Democrat Party, they are looking for results. We're talking about Black History Month. Let's talk about black results. Under President Trump, we were certainly better off. I mean, Harris, you know the numbers, but let me just break them down very quickly. Number one, economically, we had the lowest unemployment rate in the history of our country. But most importantly, the poorest Americans at the bottom grew wages faster than at the top.
No matter what the race.
Exactly.
High tide.
Here's the key. Exactly. If, in fact, you have the kind of economic policies that lead to success, it leads to success for black folks, for Hispanic folks, for Asian folks, for white folks. We don't want just black folks to do well in America. We want everyone to do well. But we particularly want the lowest quintile to actually exceed the top quintile. Only under President Trump have we seen that kind of success. But beyond that, black schools, HBCUs, receive the highest level of funding ever, and the first time in the history of the country, President Trump made it permanent.
So it's interesting. You know, much of the wider media, legacy, liberal, whatever you want to call them, that actually is part of Black History Month now. I mean, if they would talk about it. But greater,
exactly.
and you and I both have said this, it's American history. It's our shared history together.
Yes.
And it's a high tide lifts all boats. I want to talk with you a little bit about what's happening, though, specifically in places like New York and Chicago. I'm reading that the president might have a rally here in New York. What is he tapping into in communities of color that has their attention?
Two things, Harris. Number one, the frustration that comes from the last 3.5 years of delusion. The fact of the matter is that President Biden has been delusional. He has assumed that just because you're black, you're supposed to be voting for Democrats. He actually said, you can't be black if you don't vote for a Democrat.
Yes, he did.
That is just insane. And the other thing that President Trump is tapping into is optimism. Black Americans, like the rest of our country, we want to be more optimistic about our future, more optimistic about our kids' ability to exceed our success. How does that happen? By having a president who believes in the future of America more than they do the past. President Trump is talking to specifically young Americans, black ones, white ones, all of them, about the fact that with him as our commander-in-chief, we close our southern border, we have law and order in our streets, and we invest in every single zip code, quality education, allowing every American to experience their American dream.
If he were to make it that far in November, one of the things that he'll have to do something about, I would imagine, according to voters who did not go to college and don't want to be paying off other people's loans, is the very issue that that the current president has bucked the ruling of the U.S. Supreme Court on that and is just going to open up the coffers of our taxpayer dollars and pay off people's school loans. I do want to get to this.
Unbelievable.
You were on the very short list, because the president said so, to be his running mate on the ticket. But I want to go into what is failing right now in that position. So we can get to Veep stakes in a moment.
Yes.
But I want to talk about, what do we have right now in a vice president, and what do you think is needed?
Well, today, if you look at Vice President Harris, the one thing you walk away with is, if she is a border czar, she gets an F on her report card for securing our southern border. Our southern border is unsafe, insecure, and wide open. We're seeing 70,000 Americans lose their lives because border czar Harris has been completely MIA. We also recognize the fact that here's a vice president that helped bring money in to get someone out of jail who was later charged with murder. We don't need a vice president who's actually meddling in legal affairs, raising money for someone who's later charged with murder. We actually don't need a vice president who's focusing so little on the economy, so little on actual progress economically, that the greatest devastation to millennials, the inability to buy a house because inflation is so high, interest rates are higher, and that leads to no ability to afford a home. What you want in a vice president is exactly the opposite. You want someone in charge of securing our southern border.
Senator,
yes,
sometimes
Harris.
we'll scroll because her assigned duties have been that have been given her are so long. One of the things she's doing lately, though, is talking about abortion. They seem to have tasked her with doing that. Oh, look, there's the scroll. I wasn't kidding, Senator. And so we're always looking for, she's in charge of artificial intelligence, too, if that didn't already scroll by. We're looking for that first win by this vice president. And look, we want our leaders to win no matter what party they are, because the country has to have a win at this point. But it'll be interesting to see how Republicans come back on that issue of abortion, because this tends to be a winner for the other side of the aisle. They have something to fight against. Your last quick thought on that.
Yeah, I think President Trump has said it well on this past Friday as it relates to the Alabama Supreme Court decision. He said very clearly, we are going to protect IVF. We want to make sure that little babies are born, and IVF is a very important part of that process. When you have the President of the United States actually standing strong and firm for life, especially IVF, I think you now have a Republican president who will be respected, but more importantly, he's speaking to the compassion on the issue. Give a lot of props to Senator Katie Britt, who really has dug into this issue and helped all of us see the issue clearly. And I'm just thankful to be a part of a party that wants to protect life and make sure that we have more little ones running around the country.
I'm going to ask my team, can we roll former President Trump on just what he said about Veep stakes, and then we'll go. Let's give them a minute to get that up, because I want to get your response.
He's the greatest surrogate I've ever seen. He's a much better representative for me than he is a representative for himself. And it's true. And that's a great compliment. And you know why? Because he's a high-quality person. He doesn't like talking about himself.
What was your reaction?
Well, you know, it's very kind comments from the president. I certainly appreciate those comments. I will say without any question that when I was running for president, one of the struggles was dissecting James 4:10 and making sure that I didn't exalt myself too much so God humbles me, and hoping that by humility, God harnesses the power and uses it for a better cause. And to be honest with you, I'm a big believer that all things work together for good for those who love God and call according to his purpose. And one of the things I hope happens for our country is that we get 4 more years of Donald Trump. I'm going to think less about myself and more about the future of this nation. And by doing so, I hope that we have the kind of success that we've had from 2017 to 2020. We get to have it from 2025 to 2029.
Senator Tim Scott, great to see you today. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Take care.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.